Hello everybody, my name is Emmanuel Bamidele reporting for African Mirror Television. Here I am in Durban, South Africa for the International AIDS Conference titled AIDS 2016. This is the 21st AIDS Conference and African Mirror is glad to be in this conference. One of our aims and objectives is that we want to find out what are the important messages the Swiss key players are bringing back to Switzerland, or what are they really sharing globally?
The 21st International AIDS Conference took place in Durban City of South Africa. This year, AIDS 2016 attracted over 20,000 participants from all over the world with the theme Access, Equity, Rights Now. The opening ceremony was graced with great motivation speeches from different speakers, and the ceremony was held on the birthday of Nelson Mandela and officially declared open by his grandson, Kweku Mandela.
Thank you all very much. Good evening. It is an incredible honor to be here with you tonight. 16 years ago, my grandfather, Nelson Mandela, arrived on this stage at a tipping point for South Africa. Our country's government at the time was in denial about the cause and the response to AIDS. Pitting ego against common sense and indifference over the chance to save lives. Madiba, as my grandfather was affectionately known, asked the people listening around the world to move beyond their differences and do something about HIV and AIDS treatment. Not just in wealthy Western countries, he called AIDS one of the greatest threats humankind had ever faced. The people who took his words to heart and stood up to say enough is enough are many of you who are here with us tonight. You form part of the remarkable progress and history we've been able to achieve over the last 16 years. To move from a world where HIV treatment was once reserved for the largely wealthy and fortunate to a place where 17 million people around the world have access to life-saving treatment.
But I think it is time that we acknowledge that something is terribly wrong. I think it's time we face the truth about the unjust world we live in. The truth is, we have every tool we need to prevent the spread of HIV. Every tool. Condoms, PrEP, PEP, ART, awareness, education. And yet 2.1 million people, 150 of them children, were infected with HIV last year. In South Africa alone, 180,000 people died of AIDS last year. 2.1 million children and counting have been orphaned by this disease. I could go on for a very, very long time with these statistics we all know so well. But instead, let's ask ourselves, why haven't we beaten this epidemic? Could it be because we don't want to? And by we, I don't mean just the people in this room. I mean humanity, all of us. Because when you ask why, you get the same answers again and again and again. Ending AIDS is too expensive, too daunting, too complicated, too stigmatized, too politicized. And I'm going to stop there because those aren't real answers. They're just excuses. The real reason we haven't beaten this epidemic boils down to one simple fact. We value some lives more than others. We value men more than women, straight love more than gay love, white skin more than black skin, the rich and adults more than adolescents. I know this because AIDS does not discriminate on its own. It has no biological preference for black bodies, for women's bodies, for gay bodies, for youth or the poor. It doesn't single out the vulnerable, the oppressed, or the abused. We single out the vulnerable, the oppressed, and the abused. I just want to be clear about what the "it" in that sentence is. It is not just AIDS. It is the culture that condones rape and shames victims into silence. It is the cycle of poverty and violence that traps girls into teen marriages and forces them to sell their bodies to provide for their families. It is the racism that allows the white and the wealthy to exploit the black and the poor and then blame them for their own suffering. It is the homophobia that shames and isolates LGBT youth and keeps them from life-saving healthcare and education. HIV is not just transmitted by sex. It's transmitted by sexism, racism, poverty, and homophobia.
Her Excellency Mrs. Hélène Budliger-Artieda, the Swiss ambassador to South Africa, hosted the Swiss delegates from different institutions and disciplines to a dinner at the Cargo restaurant. Special guest of honor, Madame Ruth Dreyfus, the former Swiss Minister for Home Affairs and other professional, highlighted some points in regards to the Swiss contribution towards ending the AIDS epidemic by 2030.
So when I was in Switzerland, I was confronted with the AIDS epidemic and a huge increase in drug consumption. So that on one side, I had to fight against the discrimination of the AIDS patient. I had to deliver new medicines and to develop really a policy, I would say, of solidarity, because as we know all, it is discrimination that is really the reason of the disease, more than the virus itself. So when I was there, I was also active in the drug policy because the drug consumption, injecting drugs, was one of the big sources of the epidemic, so that we had to develop for this special population, which was more discriminated than all others, that were a population criminalized and living in the underground, hidden and silent. We had to develop new measures, new treatments, new measures to reduce the harm, like syringes exchange, like new therapies and so on. So this experience was successful. It was successful in reducing the contamination and helping the people to survive.
Research is absolutely crucial for the agenda to end AIDS by 2030. It is crucial to understand how we can get people to take an HIV test, to know their status, and to link up with care if they're HIV positive. We know what to do, but we often don't know how to do it.
I think what you have to realize is that migrants will come to Europe just like their colleagues that they live here in Africa. They are plagued with a lot of challenges, and I think the best intervention or approach that we have in Tedder's Home is our ability to work with individuals, particularly the youth, and provide them with psychosocial support.
It's been 16 years since the last AIDS conference took place here in Durban, and 2016 is also an important year for Gilead, in that it has been 10 years since we first signed up Indian generic companies to manufacture our drugs with a license, and towards the end of this year we will see 10 million patients worldwide, or in the developing world, to be treated with our drugs.
It's a very inspiring moment because I see so many activists doing community-based work in countries worldwide, and the engagement is so high and colorful. I'd really love to take some energy back to Switzerland and to get the community more implicated.
I think there are a lot of things very different in Switzerland and here down in Africa. The common things are still fighting the stigma, fighting discrimination, and being together, also being together with transgender people, with LGBT people, and not making diversity but making equality. So that was in a few speeches mentioned, and that we bring home to Switzerland.
It's good for this conference to come to South Africa, but it mustn't go on and on, because we South Africans, we know that the people who are really discriminated, the people that need to be looked after, need to be taught, or need to be educated, are the poor people and the people who are discriminated by their color. So I think those are the people that they need education. And the young people, they need to be represented. They need to be well taught about the HIV, because they're the ones who are infected by HIV/AIDS in nowadays, more than the people that are old. But it's good for this conference to come, but let's hope that it's not going to go on and on without us going to the grassroots and really educate those people who really need education in our own languages or in our different languages, in the farm, in the rural areas. You know, I mean, let's spread the message for those people, because they are uneducated and they need education. Once you've got education, you know about the disease. You can even prevent the disease if you know, if you are educated or you have been well taught about that disease.
One thing I know, firstly, as a young South African, it's a good thing that if you're studying like us, I think it's better if you abstain, just to prevent yourself or to avoid yourself from contracting the diseases. And secondly, if you are aware of the diseases, tell others who do not know what to do. Maybe, for instance, you can tell them, instead of having sex, they can abstain. If they are having sex, they can use condoms and all that to protect themselves. And by that, they can also educate their own families, and the families can also know what's happening, and they can also know how to prevent the disease.
You mentioned political will. I think it's very important. What we ask ourselves as a government as well, how can we engage beyond being funders? And we are proud to be funders, 10 million per year to UNAIDS currently, 20 million to the Global Fund, and we fund bilateral programs on sexual and reproductive health and rights and HIV. But how can we engage? So Switzerland being the chair of the UNAIDS board this year, and last year we have been vice chair of the UNAIDS board. Switzerland has to Zimbabwe. Exactly, yes. And Switzerland had the honor to co-facilitate the political declaration of the high-level meeting this year in June, together with Zambia. So I think these are commitments that go beyond just funding, and I think that we have to honor the honor to actually take on such tasks that really underline additional commitment beyond the funding.
That's true. Especially in South Africa, what happened since the last conference that happened here in Durban in the year 2000 to now 2016, where you have basically 3.4 million HIV positive people under ART, sponsored and financed by the government. I think that is outstanding.
Yes, but not at the end. You have to. I think what I learned was that, in contrast to Switzerland, here on the continent of Africa, only half of 50% of people being HIV positive have the chance to get treated. So, and in contrast to Switzerland, where everybody has the possibility to get treatment.